Welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast, a podcast that inspires and equips men to lead lives of intentionality and grow to their full potential. I'm your host, Jonathan McGinley, a life coach that helps men just like you create the life that you want and live a story of significance through my coaching and tools on intentionality. Thanks for joining and welcome to the show. Today, I'm joined by our guest, Justin Ray, and we're going to discuss the intentionality that it takes to build a business from the ground up. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Good. I'm happy to be here, man. Happy to be doing this with you. It's exciting.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm super pumped to have you on the show. Justin built an e-commerce business from the ground up to multi seven figures, and he actually just successfully exited the business as well. So excited to just learn from your experience and your insight and your knowledge. And so super thankful for you taking the time to join us. And one reason I asked Justin to be on the show, he's a very successful entrepreneur, businessman. I've always admired that a lot about you, man. But also he's a very humble guy. And that's one of the things I admire a lot about you too, is just the way that you carry yourself. He's a very down-to-earth guy. You wouldn't even know necessarily that he had all this business success because he just invests in relationships, treats everybody the same, treats everybody with respect. And I look up to you a lot in that way, man. And as I build my business, that's something I want to always keep in mind, is just living with humility. So thank you for modeling that.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's been really awesome to see your journey over the last few years as well, just with kind of pursuing your dreams and making the big jump from a nice job into the world of entrepreneurship, which can be a little bit unsettling at times. So I just think that's really awesome, man. I'm excited for what you've done so far. I think it's great, and where you're going.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Well, I'd love to just kind of let the listeners know exactly what it was that you did. So as we begin, maybe just tell us a little bit about the business that you just sold.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little odd because when we actually, the company that we sold our brand to wanted us to sign an NDA. Basically, it's like a disclosure agreement. You can't say certain things. And the things that we can't say are basically the name of the brand and the details surrounding what we sold it for publicly. I can tell friends and family, but I just can't say it publicly. It was really weird. We pushed back on it with our attorneys, but it is what it is. They're a big company and they're just trying to protect their moves. And there's a lot of competition out there. So that's kind of their reasoning. But basically, it was an e-commerce brand, which for those listening that don't know, was basically just a brand that we started and did only business online. So we sold motorcycle and bicycle accessories. We designed them ourselves. We manufactured them ourselves. And we had an office here in Fort Collins in Old Town. And then we had it manufactured overseas, sent to our warehouses, and then did all the marketing online for it. And then when it sold online, it just shipped from the warehouses. So we were fortunate to do a lot of it pretty hands-off. We did go to China every year to visit with our factories and things like that. But yeah, that's basically the kind of the gist of the business.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, super amazing brand. It was cool watching you just kind of build that thing to what it became. And I love to hear about the very beginnings of the business. So, when you were first getting started, how did you decide this was something you wanted to pursue?
Well, it's one of those things where, and I think this is kind of an important distinction. It wasn't like I just found this and then it just happened. It was like I made the commitment to, and I didn't even really think of the entrepreneur journey at the time. At the time, it was just, I wanted two things. I had just gotten out of college. I went to a 2-year Bible college in upstate New York. And I was pretty disenchanted with life because I went from some of the funnest years of my life to just working. And I was like, man, this sucks, And I decided that I wanted two things. I wanted to be able to do something that I loved every day, and I wanted to be able to work from wherever. And so I wanted something that fit that criteria. So when I made that commitment to those two things that I wanted in life, I started just trying opportunities that came my way. Um, like the first of which was renovating a foreclosed home by myself. It was a really small 800 square foot home in Maine. And that led to one thing, led to another, and eventually led to the company that I built and then sold. And I think it's an important distinction because when you're hungry, you're just trying things, and something is going to work out eventually, but you don't really know what that is. So
Mm-hmm.
after the house, I did a network marketing company. It's like multi-level marketing, like when your friend calls you up and he says, "Hey, are you interested in making money part-time?" And then he tries to get you to his house to do a living room meeting. And
Right.
that was the thing I did after my house. And I learned a ton from that. I had some really great mentors, but that was a key part of my story because I learned that I did not like network marketing. I have nothing against it. I think that there's a lot of good that comes out of those businesses. And if you know what network marketing is, you either love it or you hate it. So it's one of those funny things. But at one of those meetings, I I met my now business partner, Jeremiah, and basically what happened was I had heard like a year ago about selling and starting your own brand online.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about it from a podcast. I looked into it, and I was just like, man, this seems really, really cool, but I don't really know how to get started. But at that network marketing business meeting, the company I was with was ACN. um, I met Jeremiah, and he had started his own fitness products brand. They sold like armbands, foam rollers, things like that for working out. And they were already pretty successful. And his name got brought up at the meeting, and I started just chatting with him about it. And I said, "Hey, man, I'd love to get lunch sometime. I'll buy you lunch. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing." And so it was there that we started talking. And he at the time was like, his brand was already doing 7 figures annually, and so like just over 1 million a year. And I was like, this seems so cool. Would you be willing to help me get started in this? We'll form a partnership agreement on a basis for 1 year, see how it goes, and then we'll just after that year decide whether or not we like working with each other. And that was 6 years ago. And at that meeting, we walked out of, it was a Panera Bread. We walked out of the Panera Bread, and I looked at my motorcycle, and I was like, hey, uh, what if we did something? I had this phone mount on my handlebars that holds your cell phone to your handlebars.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was a really bad one. And I was like, what if we did something like this that was high quality but affordable? And we were like, well, we'll look into it. And then that ended up being the first product we launched, and ultimately ended up being the best seller. So
Wow.
that's
Wow. That's
how the
awesome.
brand got started. Yeah, it was pretty funny. And from there, we had trials as business partners along the way, but ultimately, like, we became really good friends, really good business partners, and we just worked through anytime there was an issue with the relationship in terms of business. We just worked through it, and ultimately those problems got less and less because we learned how to work with each other. And then 6 years later, we ended up going 50-50, and it ended up working out really well, just the business partnership as well. So that was a huge blessing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Super cool. I love what you said early on when you said you kind of had the vision of, hey, I want to be able to work remote and I want to do something I love, but you didn't necessarily know what that was at the time. And you just started moving. You just started doing stuff. I think a lot of times, it's easy for us to just kind of wait until we have this big epiphany moment or something where it's like, okay, this is the thing that I'm
Yep.
going to be passionate about. But it sounds like from what you're saying is you were like, here's the vision, and I'm just going to start trying things, and then you stumbled on your passion as you went. Is that pretty true? Like you really learned that you loved this e-commerce thing as you got going?
Yeah. Very true, because and I tell people this when they say they want to own their own business and run their own business: decide first what you want the business to serve in your life, because your business should serve
Mm,
your lifestyle. Your lifestyle should not serve your business. It might be unequally weighted when you start. You might be putting in a ton of hours to the business, but eventually it should get to the point where your business is serving your lifestyle. So I'm just a really big believer in like kind of reverse engineering the life you want and then trying things, because you're not going to know. And I have to remind myself now, being in this like semi-retired place and like, you know, itching to start another business, just like, I just got to get back out there and try things, which I've been doing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really good. I think it's easy to get paralyzed by, you know, trying to find that thing. But if you start with the big picture in mind, which it sounds like you did, then that can kind of lead you to just try things, and you end up landing on what you wanted. So I love that. What were some of kind of the biggest challenges then in the early stages of getting this thing off the ground?
So it's kind of funny because some of the biggest challenges we had were funding inventory. Like when you have a business that takes off successfully, which we were very fortunate in the early phases, because like I shared with you in my story, there were other things that didn't work out for me. I had tried a ton of things.
Right.
But this one took off, right? So we had to really, we were constantly running out of inventory. And when you do that, especially if you're selling on Amazon, it can really hurt you because all the work that you put into ranking your products to customers don't know this, but there's a lot of work that goes into getting your product in front of the customer. And we were running out of inventory a lot. So we had to raise money. We had to come up with money from different places to fund orders because we were making money, but all the money was just going right back into the business. So even though it was successful and profitable, it was growing so fast that we weren't taking any of those profits and we were just putting it back into the business. And then the other big challenge was going from being an employee to then owning my own business. I didn't know how to properly manage myself. And it's always an ongoing battle, but especially in those first 6 months, it was like I just didn't really know how to fully manage myself. And I just kind of like suffered my way through that. And I think there was a lot of well-intentioned unproductivity going on that was making it harder than I thought it was to run the company, you know?
Right. No, that makes sense. And I think that is one of the biggest jumps when you go from, you know, kind of the career world into entrepreneurship, the business world into entrepreneurship, is you do have to really manage yourself. That's a big piece of it, that now you don't have anyone looking over your shoulder. You don't have accountability except to yourself. So I'd love to kind of dig into that a little more. What were some of those biggest challenges for you? Was it time management? Was it focus? Was it, you know, what were some of those biggest challenges for you?
Time management was a big one. Knowing, you know, how to take care of the most important tasks in my day first, which oftentimes I would think was like responding to emails, which, you know, really I should have been focused on, okay, what's the next step for actually growing the business to where it can be stabilized, where we're not constantly worrying about our next inventory order. So I was just focused on low-level tasks instead of high-level tasks. And also, I thought I had to do everything myself. So like we were just responding to customer emails. We were fulfilling orders that were coming from China to our warehouses. Like we're doing all that. And and the company at that time had enough money to pay someone else to do it. But I was putting that off because I was afraid of hiring people. I was afraid of getting people to fill those positions that couldn't be automated to a computer program or something like that. And, you know, that's it, I think plays just as much into that productivity is doing tasks that you could learn how to delegate to someone else. And that definitely took a lot of my time, I would say, for the first year and a half, 2 years of the business.
For sure. And I know like some of the business owners I've worked with, this is such a classic problem when you first are getting going, right? Because you're used to doing everything. You're wearing all the hats. But then you run into this point where it's hard to make that transition to grow, to be able to scale your business when you're doing everything. Um, but making that jump to be able to hire people out to delegate is tricky at first. How did you kind of first make that jump to say, okay, I need to just trust that other people can do these jobs, and ultimately that's going to lead to greater scalability?
Well, basically it was like all the business leaders around me and the conferences that I would go to would say, hire out, hire out, hire out. And so finally, we just started small. We started with customer service emails, just made templates, something easy that we could hire somebody and they could just respond to people. You're getting pretty much the same questions all the time. So that was the first step. And then from there, we just built. So it was just starting small. What's the easiest task that we can get off our plates? And that was kind of how we overcame that to start with.
Yeah. Was that like a scary jump for you to relinquish some control?
Those things weren't as scary, the emails and stuff, because it was like, okay, this just makes sense. But when it got scary was when it was more high level tasks, and when the business started getting into multi-millions in gross revenue, we couldn't be doing everything anymore because our time was too valuable to be focusing on even some of the tasks that I was perceiving as valuable. So hiring our project manager was kind of a big deal. That was scary because we would give tasks and then micromanage, take back,
Mm-hmm.
and it just doesn't create for a harmonious work environment when you're
Right.
doing it that way. So that was learning to let go. And also more than that, it was learning how to know if somebody's doing something right. So it was just a lot of different things to kind of make sure we're happening right. But, eventually in the end, you always see that it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's good. I know that's always a scary step, but a necessary one. Yeah, and it sounds like you had other mentors and business leaders to speak into your life and to kind of tell you that that's a necessary step.
Yeah. Personal development is something that I've always been a really big believer in. And I would say that actually started my entrepreneurial journey before anything.
Mm,
So I was always
yeah.
going to conferences probably once a quarter once we started the company, reading books, but then, just being around people like that or listening to podcasts like this. And you just, you hear different things here and there that are helpful. So yeah, mentorship was something that I really invested in as well.
That's so good. That's so good. Did you have kind of like a plan for personal growth like that, or was it something you kind of stumbled into of, hey, I'm learning these things and now it's changing my life? Or, were you very intentional about that at the beginning?
Well, not necessarily a plan. For me, it was just, I mean, even still, I probably read one book a month. Um,
Hmm.
and the other thing that to me, it was okay, conferences surrounding my industry so I can know what's going on and be on the cutting edge. And then also my own personal mindset. And that's where the books came into play. In the last 2.5 years of it, I had a business coach, and that was really helpful. And he definitely laid out more of a traditional plan, but I never really had anything super traditional that I had followed
Hmm.
before that.
Right.
And then also being a part of business mastermind groups, um, there was there was a lot of intentionality in it, but no, I never really had like a set plan.
Yeah. But it sounds like you really made that a priority in terms of growing, being around people who are pushing you, being willing to take advice and things like that. Because I think a lot of times it's very easy to try to work on the business, and that's a very tangible thing, but you don't work on yourself, right?
Mm,
So a lot of times you start working on a business and you're working on all the X's and O's. But if you don't continue to grow as an individual, as a business leader, there's always going to be kind of that lid that you bump into.
oh,
And
for sure.
I know, like John Maxwell, he talks about the law of the lid is what he calls it, but
Mm,
it's pretty much, if you're only a level 3 person, your business can only grow to a level 2. If you're a level 6, your business can only grow to a level 5. So he always talks about how important it is to grow as an individual in your character and your skills and then your business can kind of grow with it. Did you kind of experience that in terms of as you grew as an individual, your business started to scale more?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I love how you're putting it, the law of the lid, because like it's and it's a cliche that I think if you're listening to entrepreneurial podcasts and things like that, you're going to hear it a lot, but it's so true. Like if somebody tells me, one of the things that I really admire about you is you pour a lot into personal development. And I don't even have to know what your business is or whether or not you're an expert in the industry. I already know you're going to go places with that. Because we talk about it a lot when we're just hanging out. So I think that that's your most valuable asset, sometimes even over how much of an expert you are in the industry that you're in. Um, and that's been really true for me. I mean, and I don't fault myself for this, but in the early stages, I had launched other brands in the same industry because I loved building brands. I loved making e-commerce products that could be sold online. And
Hmm.
some of those other brands failed, but not necessarily because they were bad ideas. They failed because I didn't have the time to put into them. And I think had I been further along in my journey, I would have been better at growing those. And it's just so true. Like you can't your business will never outgrow where your mental state is at and where your leadership is at, or your
Hmm.
vision for yourself and what you think you can do. It'll never outgrow that. And if it does, and your mental state isn't there, you'll self sabotage and bring it back down.
Right, right. Yeah, that's so good. That's so wise. Yeah, well, I'd love to kind of hear, in the early stages, what were kind of the mental barriers for you, or the mindset barriers that you kind of had to work out some kinks in order to grow a business, at the size that you did?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I definitely had to work. One of the big ones was the mental barrier that it had to be hard. Um,
Hmm.
that growing a multi-million dollar business had to be really hard. And it sounds like almost silly to say that, but um, I've never heard it so clearly defined except in a book by David Osborne called Wealth Can't Wait. But he talks about the limiting beliefs that we put on ourselves. But one of those is that something has to be hard. And I grew up in a family where my parents ran a real estate investing company and they were doing really well. And then they went through the Great Recession and life got really, really hard for a long time and was really
Hmm.
stressful. And I had always wondered if that's how it had to be. Um, so that was definitely something that I had to work through personally. I also had to work through being able to kind of see the value in taking on other people because I wanted to be like a solo entrepreneur, and
Hmm.
I didn't want to have a lot of responsibility, and I guess maybe that just comes with age too. But so hiring people was like a two-sided thing because it was like not only was it a lot of work and scary, but it was like, oh, now these people are depending on me, you know.
Right,
And so
right.
I kind of shirked that at first. So that was part
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, so you had this idea that everything had to be really hard. So, can you expand on that a little bit in terms of how did that mindset shift for you as you got going?
Yeah, I think, well, like you can tend to make things harder on yourself than they need to be.
Hmm.
Um, so like as you grow your business and you overcome different challenges that threaten the business, at first some of those challenges might seem really scary. And then as you overcome them, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So it's kind of the same with that mindset of being like, your mindset is like we find what we look for, right? So if your mindset
Right.
is it's really hard to make a product successful and it takes a lot of work, then you're probably not going to see the shortcuts and the path that
Mm.
can actually accelerate the revenue or the success of a product, um, past being like, oh no, that's too easy, I can't do that, like it's not going to last, or just like it's hard to explain until you really see it play out. But you can just make it a lot harder on yourself than you think. I'm trying to think of a good example of this, but all that really comes to mind is just honestly, even fixating on things too much, having a problem and being like, oh, this is really stressful. Like this is just stressful because it's a problem and it's making my business hard, instead of being like, you know what, we figured out this far and we're going to figure out this too. And there's going to be something that comes up. There's going to be a solution that comes up that we're going to find, instead of being like, this is just so stressful. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh, my day's ruined because this thing didn't go right, you know?
Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Man podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. If you are someone who is looking to take your life to the next level, accelerate your success, and live more intentionally, I would love to help. Shoot me a text at 970-430-6085, and we can schedule a time to meet to discuss your vision and your goals. Again, that is 970-430-6085. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, build a life that matters by living intentionally.